Hey everybody, and welcome to the kickoff episode of the Ultimate Fantasy Football Three-Way. This week it's actually a little bit more of a fantasy football tag team as Murr came down with a serious bout of food poisoning. I'm your host, Sean Big Poppa Williams. We've got all the action for the 2016 NFL season with Jamie Liehr. Say hi to everybody, Jamie.
What's going on, everybody? Happy to be back for the 2016 football season. Can't wait to get this underway.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll give you some solid analysis and content and get us all winning money at some daily fantasy football this year. But before we get into it, I think it's only appropriate for us to talk about the contest changes that DraftKings has made so far this year. I'm not a big fan. I don't think Liehr is. Just to give those of you that are new to it a little bit of a background, they basically changed their normal GPP structure, which was paying out roughly the top 20%. And now they're paying out the top 30%. And how they got that was basically they took the money that normally went to first place, the first place prize winner, and just distribute it to the other spots, essentially creating a triple up that doesn't pay even double up money until you place in the top 9%. I'm sorry, the format's just crazy, and it's not worth it without the big top end prizes anymore. That dream of cashing out with that monster fantasy cash. And it's just a bad structure. And I personally am limiting my entries on DraftKings this week to the single entry and the 3-entry max tournaments and to 50-50s. And I encourage you to do the same. Liehr, what are your thoughts on the new contest formats?
It's definitely, I like the fact that more people in the field will obviously be winning money. But for me, what I really don't like about it is, if you are one of those players and you get that one GPP victory, like you just don't get that, hey, I'm set for the rest of the season to, really go after it or, into your investment. So you got to grind it out a lot more than what you've had to do in the past. But that just means, the more homework you got to do, the more tournaments and that you'll be able to take down the season, hopefully. So.
Yeah, it's just the math kind of doesn't lie, and it says that unless you reach the top 9%, and you're saying running a 10-team train, which is normally what I do, I run 10 different lineups every week on DraftKings, that I have to clear 7 of my 10 teams to be profitable. And I'm good, but dude, that's a lot to ask for out of any player.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So we haven't even talked about the Millie Maker that they posted. That's a $3 entry with 2 million people entered into it. It's just an absurd tournament. Like, if you even max entered it at the 150 max you can, you have like almost no percentage gained on the field. Somebody's randomly going to hit perfect to get that lineup done, and even more so than normal. And I think you're going to have to be near perfect to even hit the cash line with that many people. Your thoughts, buddy?
Yeah, man. It's basically like you're just handing over your money for a potential lottery ticket. And, you're just putting your football knowledge to work instead of your rando pick numbers to work. So, anybody could win the tournament, but you definitely have to be perfection to take that one down. And for me, really, my money is wisely invested in other aspects this week instead of that Hail Maker. So,
right, I agree with you. And just like another thing, and we wouldn't talk smack on DraftKings, at least not this much, if they sponsored our show like they should. But since they don't, I don't feel guilty about it. And I'm also not a fan of them leaving the Monday night games off the slate. I really liked having a Monday night sweat if I didn't have players. And if I had Monday night players going, I loved having the sweat of watching my guys move my lineups up on Monday night. So it's just a couple of things that really upset me about DraftKings this year and kind of like put a little bit of a damper on the fantasy cloud.
Yeah, and I want to throw my 2 cents on there too, because that is, one of the other disappointing factors as well. Because I too, going into Sunday, you put your lineups in Sunday morning, and then you make sure that you have a couple of runners that you think that are going to run, and you've got that extra player or two on the Monday night slate, and you calculate it up Sunday night after all the games are done, and you love that sweat. So, but it is sad that that's out of it, but. It just shrinks the field even more. And so you have less of a player pool to pull from now than you have in the past year. So it's going to make it easier, and more people are going to have the same lineups, which means that more of the money is going to be ended up being shared.
That was a great point, and I think we've ragged on DraftKings week one long enough. Clearly, neither one of us are fans, and if Murr was here, not dealing with food poisoning, I'm sure he would agree as well. But everybody watches the show more for our picks than our views on DraftKings policies. So let's get right into it. And the first game I'm going to give you guys is the one that everyone seems to be talking about, except I'm going to give you a completely different take on this game than most people are. And that's the New York Giants at the Dallas Cowboys. The over-under is 46 points in this game, and the Giants are currently favored by 1 point. All right, there's a fair warning here. A lot of people have this game being a shootout, and traditionally this game is just run, with a little bit of passes, mostly to the tight end for the Cowboys and Jason Witten. Now, I understand that Dak is cheap, and we'll talk about Dak in a second, but let's talk about the Giants, and I think it'll give us a little bit better picture of this game. Eli is 7,500, and his targets, Odell Beckham, is astronomically priced at 9,300. He hasn't been worth paying even $5,000 for in these matchups against the Cowboys, as he is yet to go north of the 10-point mark in this matchup. Now, I understand people keep saying that he's going to beast against this Cowboys team, but that's just not the way this game flow ever works out. Sterling Shepard is also a sexy target. At 4,900, he's a rookie that a lot of people are touting as a source of value and that way to take down the Millie Maker and all those crazy GPPs week one. I think that this is a mirage. I think that the sneaky play out of this group and the lowest owned is going to be Victor Cruz at $4,000. And if you really want to be on this game, that may be the way I would go. I just think that overall you're going to want to stay off this game at best. The tight end situation is murky between Ty and Donnell. It's an easy fade. You have no clarity of who's getting snaps, who's getting target counts there. If you really want to be on this game, my opinion is you should be on Jennings at 5,400. The running back is the best option, and in this new offense that they are running, he is going to be the bell cow back here. And at 5,400, there's not a whole lot of bell cow backs that you're going to get at cheaper price tag. That's my thought on the Giants. Do you have anything to add there, Liehr?
Yeah, as far as the Giants go, man, when you're talking about Eli Manning at $7,500, there's just better value out there this week than Eli Manning for $7,500. I would rather spend that money different area of my team than on the quarterback position. And then when it comes to Odell Beckham Jr., it's just like anything else. He can pop at any time. Historically, he hasn't been very good against Dallas, but you never know when that'll happen. And I really foresee this game to kind of go in either direction for this Giants team. I think it could go where they just completely get up on Dallas, and maybe that's one to Odell Beckham Jr., one to Jennings rushing the ball, but and maybe even a special teams play in there. But if they get out to a wide margin, look for Jennings to be the bell cow, and then the other way that this game could flow is it just could be all rushing and all Jennings. So I think you're right on there on the right point of saying that Jennings is the play, because either way you think about the game flow, Jennings is going to be involved in that game flow regardless of how the game plays out. He is going to be a huge part of that offense. So especially at that price point, great play for you.
Yeah, my problem with Jennings is there's just other running backs I like better. But now let's get to the part everybody is talking about, and that is the Dallas Cowboys. Look, it's Dak Prescott's world, and we are just living in it. Dak will be the highest-owned quarterback week one. I'm guaranteeing in cash games and in GPPs. At $5,000, it's easy to understand if you've looked at his preseason performances why everyone is on Dak Prescott. Especially when you think about that Romo in the matchup week one last year against this same Giants team put up 27.14 points. However, Dak is not Tommy Romo, and Dak is a rookie. We need to make those adjustments. Also, we need to realize that the Giants have spent a ton of money revamping their defense and trying to shore up that defense and make it better. When 40+% of the tournament is going to be owning Dak, I don't know that you want to do it. but he saves you so much money over all the other quarterbacks. It's just sexy. I understand why when you look at the roster construction. But Dez is his main target at 8,500. He's also been disappointing like Odell Beckham in the last few years in these matchups. And last year scoring only 9 points in the week 1 affair. Williams at 3,300 might be the value steal or a component of the Dak stack if you're sold out on the Dak stack that you could run, and then that would let you buy up stud running backs or support your wide receiver core of the Cowboys with stud wideouts. The problem with this game is that a DFS player has to analyze it from a theory perspective. And you have to ask, can I fade it? And if I'm not going to fade it, can I get my lineups unique from the 40% plus people that are going to own Dak Prescott lineups? And I don't know that you can. And that's what really concerns me about this, about playing the Cowboys. But if you're sold on playing the Cowboys, the guy I think you really want to play is Jason Witten at 4,100. He caught 8 balls for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns week 1 against this team last year. And traditionally in this matchup, beasts up against the Giants. I don't know why, but Witten likes to feast on the Giants. However, he's done all this feasting without a rookie quarterback at the helm. And that scares me immensely because traditionally rookie quarterbacks do not like to throw to their tight end. As a lot of football analysts have said that the tight end is the hardest route to find. So since I'm clearly not on the passing game here, am I on the running back, Ezekiel Elliott? I think he might be the best play here, but at $7,300 for a guy that hasn't seen a snap in a real NFL game, that's a hefty price tag. I mean, seriously, Liehr, he's priced as the 3rd highest running back on the board. I think that's a bit much. I like his potential, but at that price tag, you are hunting for 28 to 35 points out of him to take down a GPP. That's too much for a rookie, in my opinion. And plus, if we think he's going to have a good game against the Giants, doesn't that cut into Dak Prescott and all the other targets potential to produce points? Your thoughts, buddy?
Yeah, man, that's a lot of information to digest there. But as far as that goes, Dak Prescott to me is going to be one of those, and this is regardless of position in what game we're talking about. If we're talking about people that are going to perform and be the top, player at that position for this week, and if Dak Prescott is that guy, it's not going to matter what his ownership percentage is because you're going to have to own him to take down the GPP. But yes, will he be stupid, ridiculously owned in a very high percentage? You bet he will be, because there's just no other quarterbacks for $5,000 that you can get with the type of offensive line that he has to work with. But just unproven. You're going out with an unproven quarterback. You're going out with an unproven running back, 2 rookies, and then you're going out with, excuse my French, but old balls Witten. I mean, he's another year older. He's slower than what he has been in the past, and he's never worked with Dak Prescott when it comes to actual games. So, I'm not on any of the Dallas Cowboys this week. I'm avoiding them. I think the Giants are going to go into Dallas and just win the game regardless of how the game flow goes. But I just don't see Dallas being in any kind of streamline and have a game plan as to what they're really going to do. And I think they're just going to kind of go through the, different types of situations of the game and really learn who their team is. But they're going to struggle here at the beginning part of the season. And, I don't want, Dak Prescott or Des Bryant, because of Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. The kid's got talent, but again, he's a rookie. But that has burned me in the past of not being on rookies. So, but for week 1, I just can't put any of my money on an unproven team like that. So I'm just avoiding the whole Dallas Cowboys altogether.
Yeah, which will be an expensive week if Dak shows up. But if Dak doesn't show up or underperforms significantly, literally half the field is dead, probably.
Which is fantastic.
Right. Which is the strategy behind the fade there, especially in GPPs. All right, I think we've spent enough time on the Cowboys. But, guys, the reason why we did is that game is something that everyone is talking about in the industry, and I think it's important for us to flush that out. Liehr, it's your turn to razzle and dazzle us. You've got the Lions at the Colts. It's an over-under of 50.5. The Colts are currently 4-point favorites and one of the biggest lines of the week. Tell us about it, buddy.
I think this game's going to be crazy. So the Lions are coming off, disappointing 2015. Saw them go 7-9, which everybody was disappointed in that. They also lost the explosive fantasy freak known to all of us as Megatron. Rest in peace, sir. You will be missed. You were the man for very many years in a lot of people's fantasy leagues and won them championships. So, starting off with Matt Stafford, he's $7,200. He's got something to prove this season to all the Detroit fans. He didn't have a very good season last year. And one bright spot for him, though, is this week they're opening up with Indy at Indy, which has a horribly ranked defense of 27th against the quarterback. This could turn into a shootout, like I said from the beginning, and I think it will be between these two quarterbacks. But as far as that goes, running back position, you got Amir Abdullah for Detroit, 4,900. Not a bad price for a guy that's a starter. He could have a really nice game. He scored all of his TDs via the rush on the road last year, so kind of a little interesting fact there. But the Colts' run defense ranks 20th as of 2015. Obviously, we're in 2016. It's a new season. Still probably majority of the same core there. But then you've also got Golden Tate at 7,300. He's got a chance to score some monster points this week. He's, basically taking on that leadership role in the wide receiver group and thrusting himself into the spot where Megatron once was. And then you also got Marvin Jones at 4,600, who's kind of a semi-unknown player to most NFL people, but to fantasy players, a lot of people know him from his Cincinnati days and being there with the gunslinger. But he's going to be a huge target for Stafford this season, and he's going to be the other full-time wide receiver next to Golden Tate, so should provide them a very good 1-2 punch all season. But at this price of $4,600, Marvin Jones is a steal. And, definitely probably going to get double-digit targets this week and is also a deep threat for them. So get all over those guys this week. But that's pretty much all I'm really liking on the Lions side. What are your thoughts, Poppa?
Yeah, the problem with playing Lions is they are the Lions, which means at any given time they can just not perform and totally mess up the game vision that you had. But I really love them in the spot with the Colts having problems at corner and at safety. The Lions should be able to tear this up, and if you can find the money to put Stafford and play that offensive, play them from the offensive side and the passing side, go at it. And I agree with you, Ellie. Sorry, Abdullah is not a bad play. So how about the other side, man?
Well, real quick before we continue on that, but another little sly factor here too is Jim Caldwell. Is going back to Indianapolis where he once coached. So, he's going to want to pour it on starting week 1 of his new season with the Detroit. So, even if they do get up, look for him to not slow down. Look for him to keep putting the gas on for the rest of the game. So, but as far as the Indy side of this thing, Indy was kind of a head scratcher last year in the 2015 season, but they're definitely happy that 2016's here. Basically totally looking to redeem themselves. As they were subpar 8-8 last season, and missed a playoff appearance. But Andrew Luck, he's $8,300. He's a fantastic matchup at home. Detroit ranks 22nd against quarterbacks in 2015. Like I said, Luck's looking to come out blazing in 2016 campaign. I look for him to have a really awesome game. I mean, I'm thinking he's going to have a 300-yard game, at least 2 touchdowns, if not 3 of them, and possibly one of them running it in. And I know that's a bold prediction there, but Lucky's ready to get back to who he was and one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And I think he really wants to start off his 2016 campaign with a really good performance. But as far as the running backs here, you're looking at Frank Gore at 5,500. Just when you thought that, he was dead and buried, Gore rises again from the depths that appears for another fantasy football season. But I just can't take the chance on Gore this week. There's other options at the running back position that I feel are going to be way more productive than Gore this weekend. specifically if this is going to be a shootout, which that's the flow of the game that I think it's going to happen. And then you've also got Ty Hilton at 7,500. He had his ups and downs in 2016, but look for TY to get off to a nice start this weekend. In my opinion, I think he is too expensive this week at 7,500, but he could blow up and he could be a little bit under-owned as well. But I will definitely have some exposure on T.Y. Hilton this week. And then you also have Dante Moncrief, 6,000. Had a mini breakout season last season in 2015, but his cost is a lot higher this year than it was last year that you could get him. But T.Y.'s double covered. Look for Moncrief to get a lot of targets, along with the second-year guy, Philip Dorsett, at 4,500. He's kind of an interesting option, but as far as this type of player that I want to play week one, he's not the guy that I'm looking at to put in my lineups. And then you also have Dwayne Allen, $3,200. He's questionable for the game this week, but also if he plays, he's going to take all the share of the tight end targets because Kobe Fleener's not there anymore. So it's just Dwayne Allen. And so look for him to get, quite a bit of targets if he's, specifically plays this weekend. So what are your thoughts, Poppa, on Indy?
Forward. My problem with Dwayne Allen is I think that he's going to be stuck in blocking a lot in that offense. And this is why I'm not sure Vegas is right and all the touts and a lot of people in the industry are right about this game. And I like where your head's at. I like what you've done work-wise, but I don't think a lot of people are giving the Lions defense enough credit. And I don't think that they're taking away enough points for how bad the Colts offensive line is. And I think when you said you didn't understand why the Colts were so bad last year, let's just be clear. Their offensive line was so bad, they went through 4 quarterbacks last year. 5 if you count that one of them had to come back, right? Like, I don't understand that how the Colts think that they're going to be okay this year with not fixing the holes in that line. That limits Dwayne Allen's potential, and it can limit Luck's potential at any given snap because he's going to be running for his life. And I don't know, you know me, I love Andrew Luck. I think he's one of the greatest quarterbacks, and I would love to see him have a pocket so where he could play his heart out and rack up fantasy points. But I just think he's going to be out throwing off his back foot, throwing under duress, and in the ground a lot during this game, and that spells fantasy problems. Now, he still could rack up a lot of points and still could be fantasy viable, but, I don't know, and part of me just wants to fade this game, from that side, and play the Lions defense. I know it's dirty, but...
That is dirty.
Yeah. I see sacks. I see lots of sacks. I see a couple of interceptions because of how bad that offensive line is for the Colts. But I totally get why you're on this game, and that over-under is so sexy. But if Vegas is wrong, and just if, and you can get around it, you will make a ton of money. But it's really risky to fade.
Yeah.
You have anything to add?
No, I totally agree with everything you said, and just really depends on how the game flow goes and what happens. But I think the potential for both of these teams to just go back and forth is definitely there.
Oh yeah, and that brings us to another game where the potential is back and forth and back and forth. An over/under of 51 points is to be found in the Oakland Raiders at the New Orleans Saints game. The Saints are currently 1.5-point home favorites. As I said, this is the highest over/under line by far this week, by 4 points other than the other game that we just covered, and that line has actually moved down a couple in the last few days. Everybody and their brother is on this game, and for good reason. A dream matchup for the terrible defense of the Saints and the poorest defense of the Raiders. They've been fantasy gold for years for us to exploit. Guys, this is the narrative I keep hearing from everyone. And while I agree that most pieces are in place for the Raiders offense to beast and for the Saints offense to be all right, these teams haven't looked as in sync as I want them to be. And the Raiders have looked grossly out of sync in the preseason. That gives me quite a bit of pause when I'm trying to process whether or not to put them into my week 1 lineups. I start to get worried when I look at the fact that the Raiders have a much improved defense, and so does the Saints. The Saints are finally healthy on defense, which is something they haven't been for 2 years. The hype train is heading full speed into week 1 on this game, and I'm not sure you want to be on board. But let's go ahead and cover the Raiders and talk about this game a little bit more specifically. There's Derek Carr at 7,300. I think he's going to be the second highest quarterback ownership percentage in week one. It'll be the value buyers on Dak Prescott. The number two guys will be the guys that spend up a little bit to get on Derek Carr. And then probably 3 or 4 will be the guys that spend up even more to get on Drew Brees or Aaron Rodgers. But Derek Carr can get it done, and he has 2 beast wide receivers in Crabtree, who's underpriced at 5,500, and the man, the myth, the legend, Amari Cooper at 7,200. Look, guys, I love Amari Cooper, and I think he's super talented, and I realize his foot issues had him hamstrung a lot of last year. But the way people are overselling him so far this year is crazy. You would think he put up Julio Jones numbers, and he just doesn't. I don't understand all the love. If you're looking at the depth chart and wanting to play the tight end here, because the Saints are terrible against tight ends, Clive Walford at 3,000 is a great play. He's the receiving tight end for the Raiders, even though he's listed second on the depth chart. But once again, the play here may be Latavius Murray if the Raiders' offensive line could block at 5,600. But they've looked abysmal. The run game's looked awful. I don't know, man. Maybe it all clicks week one against the Saints. But that Saints defense is vastly improved. They have both the corners that people picked on last year are gone. They finally have Jarius Byrd healthy, who they signed 2 years ago and hasn't ever got to play. I don't know, man. I'm not sure I want some Raiders. What do you think?
Well, the crazy part is I think this is the other game on the slate that is just going to be just a knock 'em out pass fest with very little running involved. But I am all about the Latavius Murray play this week because, I mean, I will talk about it because he's one of my players that I'm going to talk about for one of my picks. But I think he's going to be a sweet play this week along with Amari Cooper. Because I just think him and David Carr are going to have to be making up some points and keeping ahead of Drew Brees in that high flying offense with him just flinging the ball around the field. So I'm not so much on Carr just because I think he's just too high priced, being $7,300. But when it comes to the other two, yeah, I'm all about them. But those are the only ones I'm about on the Raiders this week.
Fair enough. I mean, and I guess we should talk about the Saints too, since they're the second part of the highest over under of the week. And guys, quarterback Drew Brees is 8,100, and in my opinion, that's just too expensive to pay at the quarterback position this week. It hamstrings your lineups way too much. His weapons are sexy and Cooks, who had monsters in and out on lots of occasions last week at 7,700. He's probably priced just right for his performance. You have Snead, who's been tearing it up at 4,800, and rookie Michael Thomas, who everybody thinks is just going to beast up and be the man at 4K. I wouldn't be surprised to see ownership percentage spread throughout them, and they will all have high ownerships. If that offensive line, which was the problem for that team last year, struggles against the pass rush against the Raiders, and Khalil Mack starts destroying them, this could be a real rough day for all the people that think that 51 over-under is going to hit. I'm just not sold on the Saints. I think both these defenses are better than what people are giving them credit for. And I think this is yet another game where the over-under is way too high. I could be wrong, but part of me just instinctually wants to fade it. And I hope I'm right on the fades. The running back situation in New Orleans is muddled to say the best. At Ingram at 6,600 is the lead back, but Hightower at 43 will see a few snaps. But mostly what you have to worry about here is Spiller coming in on third downs and special occasions, whatever that means, in special packages for 3,600. I think the Saints running back core is an easy fade, and until injuries, I'll be fading them all year. So you won't have to hear about me talking about them from here on out. Guys, like I said, I know everybody and their brothers on the Saints game, and I'm just not. I hope I'm right. I hope everybody else is wrong. Liehr, your thoughts?
As far as the Saints side of this, there is no part of that action that I want from any Saints this week. I am not on any Saints. I would be on Drew Brees, but like you talked about already, he's $8,100. It's too expensive to spend on your quarterback. But when it comes to, I may have a couple Brandon Cooks. But 7,700 for him, that's still too. It's hard to make lineups function the way that you want them to with spending that kind of money. I mean, I'd rather have the other side of that and take Amari Cooper for $500 less. But that's just me. But I mean, as far as Willie Snead, I think a lot of players out there are cognizant of what Willie Snead did last year, and he's going to be really high owned this weekend. And you know, if he performs, that's going to be great. But if he doesn't, and you know he's 40% owned, that's going to be pretty bad for the people that played him, and really awesome for the ones that didn't. So, but I can't play any of them. And I will talk about Mark Ingram. He's also one of my picks that we'll talk about later. But I am avoiding him like the plague this weekend as well.
Fair enough, brother. All right, I believe that brings us to Liehr's second game that he's going to break down, which is the Chargers at Chiefs. It is an over-under of 43, and the Kansas City Chiefs are touchdown favorites, baby. Tell us how the Chiefs are going to win and why they're viable fantasy plays this week. But you might want to talk about the Chargers first.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Bolts here. But as far as the San Diego Chargers, you know, they're coming off a pretty horrible season last year in 2015 with a 4-12 record, dead last in the AFC West. They were 1-7 on the road in 2015. So look for that trend to continue this week as they head into Kansas City. Phyllis Rivers, he's $7,000 and just absolutely plays horribly here in Kansas City throughout his career. The noise clearly affects him. He gets easily agitated with that noise. Arrowhead will be rocking this weekend. That will affect his performance as well. So my advice is to definitely avoid Phyllis this weekend because he's just not going to pay off for his $7,000 price tag. But then as far as running backs, you got Melvin Gordon. He's 4,600. He had a morbid 2015 rookie campaign, had 0 touchdowns, saw most of his action kind of fade out during the season. Just a complete guess last year, and I can't do it again this year, even though it's a nice price for a guy that's starting. I just can't do that. And then you've got Danny Woodhead at 5,000. He's always been just an absolute PPR stud. You know, he gets half the snaps that the starter does, but yet he triples his production. But he had 9 touchdowns last season, 80 catches, you know, over 100 targets. So it's basically like having a wide receiver in a running back position. So that's kind of nice to have. But, you know, I'll definitely have some exposure to some Danny Woodhead, especially at 5,000. And then as far as the outside weapons, you've got Keenan Allen at 8,000. He had some major stud games last season, but he only played 8 games due to injury. But if he stays healthy, he will definitely have a beast of a season this year. But I think he's definitely good this weekend for maybe 6 for 80 yards and a chance to score, you know, 1, if not 2 touchdowns. But roster him where you can. But at that $8,000 price point, I think that's going to be pretty stiff for a lot of people to fit in there. And then you've got Travis Benjamin at 4,100. He's kind of an interesting play, you know, coming over from Cleveland, where he was basically their stud last year. And he had a couple of good games, but with an actual good quarterback this year, I don't know. He's going to be an interesting play, but somebody I'm going to have to wait and see as far as that's a future play for me. And then you've got Mr. Antonio Gates at 4,200. Yes, he's still actually playing games. But, you know, could be a sneaky play this weekend. And he always matches up good against Kansas City and always has good production here when he comes here. So, you know, we'll see what happens with Gates. But what do you think about the Chargers, Poppa?
Well, Barry is back, baby, and Eric Berry covers tight ends like nobody's business and stuffs the run. So I wouldn't play Gates or Melvin Gordon. I think the opportunities are going to be there for the other wides, though, and even though Phyllis will probably implode and not be worth it, personally, those wides probably will pay off their salaries, especially Keenan Allen. That's the one I really like here because they move him all around, and there are some question marks on the Chiefs' coverage as far as especially concerning when they put him in the slot. So I really like that play, but more than that, I'm intrigued about some of the people on the Chiefs side. So tell me about that, Liehr.
Well, I'm definitely excited for the 2016 campaign for the Chiefs. Going to be a bit of a homer, since this is opening weekend. But the Chiefs are coming off their first playoff win in over 20 years. Back in 1993 was the last one. So they finished 11-5, and that momentum, they'll carry that into this season. But Alex Smith, 6,500, has basically a split history with home versus away games. But he's got an okay matchup this weekend, but this just isn't a weekend that I'm going to play Alex Smith. There's other options out there that I like better than Alex. But as far as running backs, you've got Spencer Ware at 4,400. He's the starting running back this week with Charles likely to be out, along with Sharkandrick West. So he's going to be the workhorse this weekend. And I look for him to totally pay off his value and be a major player this weekend for GPP winners. But then you've got Jeremy Maclin at 6,500. J-Mac had a nice season getting used to being in a new city, working with new teammates. But now he's got, some more experience under his belt. And he should be a very, very nice play this weekend. And he's getting to know Andy Reid's offense again. But look for him to get a ton of targets along with Travis Kelce at 5,000, who blew up last year in week 1 with 2 touchdowns. And he had to own him to take down the tournaments last year in week 1. So Kelsey's going to be a major player this season. He has some potential for some good points this weekend. And he's also, I think he's going to be a safe play, specifically at his $5,000 price point. I think the Chiefs run the crap out of the ball this week in Spencer Ware in week 1 with, probably only about 20 to 30 passing attempts from Alex Smith. But like I said, I look for Spencer Ware to be the main fantasy guru in this game. So,
all right, with Ware's play, guys, I'm 100% on Ware. I think he's underpriced, starting running back. I'm sold on Ware. Now, Liehr, the question I have for you, dude, is with the Ware narration you have, and knowing that Phyllis is terrible when he comes to Arrowhead, and the Chiefs defense was so dominant and helped you take down GPPs last year if you played them. Are you interested in playing the Chiefs defense at home week 1 against these Chargers?
I think it's intriguing. I'll probably have some exposure just because of the way, they play at home. But $3,600, and they're going up against one of the worst offenses last year. So, but the only thing for me is just the chemistry with Justin Houston being out, and then Eric Berry just coming back, not playing any preseason game, not doing any mini camps, nothing. And obviously he's been there for a while, so maybe he could plug and play. But still, you got to have that that build up that rapport into the season. And I just don't know if the Chiefs defense has that yet. I think they're going to have to get a couple games under their belt first before I can start playing them. It's like they're my pick of the week. But I definitely I have other defenses that I like better this week than the Chiefs defense.
Fair enough. All right, guys, that wraps up our game-intensive breakdown. We would have 2 more for you, but Murr's sick, like I said. So we're going to go and do the rest of it with the quick hits. We'll start out with a little bit out of order, but we're going to start off with one of the favorite games that I have out of the quick hit segment, and that is Green Bay at Jacksonville. The over-under here is 48. The Packers are currently 5.5-point favorites. I don't know about you, Liehr, but I love Aaron Rodgers, Jordy Nelson, a healthy Jordy Nelson. I don't even have a problem if I was to stack that with Cobb. Cook is a sexy option at tight end since he's so cheap at 2,300, 2,400, somewhere in there. And yeah. Eddie Lacy looks like the real deal, but he's super expensive. Your thoughts on Green Bay?
I think this also has the potential of being a really high-scoring game here because you've got a young offense in Jacksonville and a very veteran offense in Green Bay. And this is going to be in Jacksonville. It's going to suit the guys, I think, more that are used to playing down in that type of weather. But I think this also could be a shootout. So I would look for, Aaron Rodgers to have a very, very good game. The problem with Aaron Rodgers, though, is his price at $8,500. That's asking a lot. But Blake Bortles is not much cheaper. He's only $7,200. So one thing I noticed is DraftKings really up the prices of the quarterbacks this year. You used to be able to get a couple of steals here and there between the $5,000-6,000 range that would help you spread out the rest of your lineup, but they really give it to you on the quarterbacks this week as far as week one. But I don't like Jordy Nelson this week. I think Randall Cobb's going to have a monster game versus Jordy Nelson. And when it comes to that fact too, I mean, they're about the same price. They're only $100 difference, but I think that Randall Cobb is going to see have less of the emphasis put on him, and I think that with having Jordy Nelson back, it's going to put him back into that old role of being that slot guy and just be able to move around and get the dinks and dunks and also the long passes. So I think Randall Cobb is going to be a monster this week. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of passing in this game.
Yeah, I do too. And like I said, I love Brodels, Robinson, Hearns, Julius.
I love Chris Ivory too, as far as the Jacksonville side of this.
Well, and Ivory's always a workhorse, and it's a nice guy, a nice price on a guy that is the bell cow back. Just a great game to be on. That's honestly what I'm hoping for. Is just like you said, I think you can get more unique by being on this game and other games than you can by being on Dallas and by being on Oakland, New Orleans. And to be honest, I don't think the 3-point difference in the line is that big of a difference here. But that's just me. The next game is the Bucks at Atlanta. Over-under is 47.5. The Falcons are favorites by a field goal. You got Julio, who's a beast here. And Matty Ice is, the dumpster fire known as Matty Ice. God only knows if he's going to have a good game or not. You also have Devontae Freeman, who has actually underperformed against this Bucks team in both matchups for his price tag. And then the Bucks, Jameis Winston and the young crew of Stallions. This game could also go down to a shootout, as both of these teams are defense optional teams for the most part.
Right.
Are you interested in anybody from here, Liehr?
When it comes to it, the crazy part is I really think that Mohamed Sanu, I'm just saying this right now, but I think Mohamed Sanu is going to have a pretty decent season this year. He's taken over, that second wide receiver position role. When it comes to Devontae Freeman, you already kind of mentioned it a little bit, but he just doesn't. Hasn't done very well against Tampa Bay. Now he is playing at home, which I think that does favor his running style. But I definitely think he has the potential of having a monster game this week. And 6,900, it's a great point to start off the season. But I think he has no other place to go but up as far as his salary from here. So if you're going to try to get on the Devontae Freeman train, this might be the week to get him for a decent price before he goes, hiking north of, 7,500. But as far as the rest of it, I'm kind of off of this game. I really don't know what kind of direction this game's going to go. Like you said, defense optional teams, and both offenses could struggle as well, putting it, back on the running game. And, the muscle hamster, Doug Martin had a great 2015 season. I hope he keeps it up this year. But he also, too, 6,200, kind of some nice value there going up against the 29th ranked defense against the run in Atlanta. So, but who knows what's going to happen. But I will have probably some exposure to Doug Martin on this game. But that's probably going to be close to being it.
Yeah, dude. And nobody is talking about Doug Martin so far in the industry, pretty much. He's just been left out of everybody's conversation. I think that's a very sneaky play there. The next game is Buffalo at Baltimore. It's a 44.5 over-under. Baltimore is currently 3-point favorites. You know what? There are a lot of question marks in this game to me. I love Sammy Watkins, but he's coming off the injury. But when he's healthy, he plays like a beast, especially against that terrible Baltimore secondary. Other than that, you can guess on which one of the wides for Baltimore is going to have the game. But other than Steve Smith at value, I'm not sure I want to play any of them, and I'm not even sure I want to play Steve Smith, as old as he is, and not knowing if he's back. I don't know. You got any plays you like in this game, Liehr?
I think a lot of people are going to have some healthy ownership of LaShawn McCoy.
Hmm.
You know, he's such a one of those types of players that he's really really good or really really bad, and starting out week one, I just don't know what direction he's going to kind of go. So spending $6,400 on him, I don't know if I could do that. But as far as any other options, um, like you said, Watkins is interesting to me. I have already put him on one of my teams that I did have that I put together already, just because of his option there, because the secondary for Baltimore was so putrid last year. But as far as anything else, I really don't have any exposure or have any want as far as either quarterback either in this situation.
Yeah, and Watkins is so cheap for the study is it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The next game is Chicago at Houston. It's a 44 over under. The Texans are 6-point favorites. I think this is going to be quick. The only plays here, in my opinion, Texans defense, Lamar Miller running behind that Texans offensive line. If you want to take a flyer, DeAndre Hopkins, sure, because he's a stallion. I just don't trust Brock Osweiler, and I don't trust the need of them to score points via DeAndre Hopkins this week. I think the defense and Lamar Miller are more than going to get it done. The only play I'm even remotely considering on the Bears is Langford, and I think it's because he will catch enough balls to pay off his price tag. But other than that, dude, this game is not even in consideration for me other than those plays. Your thoughts, Lear?
Ditto.
That moves us quickly on to the next one then, where we have more action to talk about, I know. This is Cincinnati at the New York Jets. It's a 41.5 over-under. Cincinnati is a 2-point road favorite. Will this be a shootout? If so, I think you want to be on A.J. Green and Brandon Marshall, maybe even sprinkling some Eric Decker. If it's not, and a defensive, it's going to go one of the two ways. There's not going to be a mediocre ground here. They're either going to both be slinging it all around the field, in which case the quarterbacks are in play and the wides, or it's going to be a slug it out game. You just never know with both of these defenses. They're both capable of completely shutting teams down, and then they're both capable of just not showing up. And it is Andy Dalton on the road. You know how the Red Rifle has some issues on the road. He got better at that last year, but it's a lot to ask for. Your thoughts about this game, Lear?
Yeah. So I think this game is going to be a complete shootout. I really like both of the passing games in this game, and even when we talk about making lineups and putting lineups together and doing the pairing, I think this is a great week to pair Fitzpatrick, Brandon Marshall together. At home to start the 2016 season. Fitzpatrick wants to get off to a great start. They've been talking about him in the media as of late, saying, oh, he's going to be better this season than he was last season. And he had a great season last season. So I think Cincinnati is going to be playing catch up in this game, but that's only because I think Ryan Fitzpatrick and Brandon Marshall are going to be, getting together real early in the game. But also Matt Forte is a play too that I really think he's going to have a decent game, and he's going to be part of that screen game. Just kind of like in his old Chicago days. The only problem with Forte here is he's $6,100, which that kind of hampers you on what you can do with the rest of your lineups. But if you truly believe in the Forte play this week and he's going to return value on that $6,100, you're looking at least, you got to have at least 3 times, 4 times your money with Forte. So, you're looking to ask for a 25-point day. So you really think that they're going to have to run the ball. So, but we'll see what happens. But I think this game also too is going to be, it's going to hit the over, and I think that it's going to surprise some people.
That game's going to hit the over. The scenario I see is the shootout. That's where I'm feeling it this week. The next matchup on the board, Larry, you're going to love this one. This is the dumpster fire matchup of the week. 2 teams that might be contending for worse than the NFL when all is said and done. Cleveland at Philadelphia. It is a 41 over-under. Philadelphia is a 4-point home favorite. How you're only favored 4 points against this terribleness known as Cleveland should be an indication of how terrible the Eagles are after Chip Kelly got done gutting them. I like, I think a Carson Wentz play here is really creative at the 5K mark to get away from the Dak Prescott play. I I think you can get on an island if you're wanting to value quarterback here. I don't know which of his targets to pair him with. That's the problem, and that includes throwing Ertz and Eifert into the mix. I mean, Ertz and Eifert, Ertz and Selleck into the mix. Excuse me. And I don't feel comfortable. Part of what I wanted to do, and like before I saw the Browns playing in preseason, was to play RG3 and pair him with Gary Barnage, but they have looked awful, and I mean awful, awful. Like hot, wet garbage, awful. Dumpster fire, awful. So bad, so bad. And the Eagles' defenses look so improved. Sneaky play of the week is the Eagles' defense against this crazy, terrible Browns team. Your thoughts, Liehr?
Well, I like that Eagles play defense at $3,300. I that could be a real sneaker right there. But yeah, do I want any part of this game? No, I'm not picking any particular players from this game. One is I have no idea which direction that this is going to go. As far as an intriguing play, Ryan Matthews intrigues me just because of his price of 5,700 and what he can do in this offense because it's Doug Peterson's going to be running this bad boy, and he comes from the Andy Reid tree. So, he likes his running backs and, he likes his screen game. So, I think Ryan Matthews, if he doesn't get broke in the first quarter, he may have a decent game on Sunday. So, kind of a sneaky play, but anything else, no, thank you.
Fair enough. An injury is always a concern when one is rostering Glass Joe. He is the only player to break more collarbones and score touchdowns in a season at running back. So, there's always that. The next game we have on the slate is Minnesota at Tennessee. It's a 41 over-under. The Vikings are 2-point road favorites. This line has been adjusted, and it keeps falling because of the loss of Teddy Bridgewater, quarterback. Because of that, I don't want any piece of Minnesota. I don't understand. Like, this team's going to look like a shell of themselves, I think, without their quarterback. I think Bridgewater was the leader of that team in and out of the huddle. And I hope him a speedy recovery, but I'm not going to play any Vikings until they prove me different, and that includes on Tennessee's porous secondary. I do like some Titans, but the Vikings defense is fairly good. I don't know, man. Like Delaney Walker was a gold mine for us fantasy wise last year. Are you on Delaney Walker or maybe the rookie Tajay Sharp for Tennessee?
No, this is another game like the Cleveland-Philly game that we just talked about. There's not a lot of targets here that I will be looking for. I am just a tad or a wee bit intrigued by DeMarco Murray at 5,300. Maybe because I'm still drinking the Kool-Aid from a couple years back when he was with Dallas. But I don't know. I think with him getting a fresh start, a new place, teams have to focus on Mariota too because that kid is good. So I don't think that there's going to be as much emphasis on DeMarco Murray, and I think people have kind of forgotten about DeMarco Murray too. So he might be a sneaky low-owned guy this week. So being 5,300. He kind of only has one direction to go, and that's up from here. So, if you're going to take advantage of owning some DeMarco Murray, it would be week one before his price goes up. So, but as far as the quarterbacks, I don't think Mariota is going to have, where he gets his points is when he runs the football, and I don't think that's going to happen this weekend. I definitely don't want any part of the Minnesota debacle at quarterback. So thus I don't want any part of Minnesota wide receiver debacle, and I don't want any part of Adrian Peterson because they're just going to stack the box because they know that what they're going to do. So this is going to be a low, slow game, and it's going to be all about the running for Tennessee, I believe, and DeMarco Murray probably will have a good game. So if I have a recommendation, I guess it would be own a little bit at least of some DeMarco Murray this weekend.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about this a little bit later in the picks, but I agree with Lear. It's just not a game I want to be on. The next game is Miami at Seattle, 44 over under. Seattle's 10.5 point favorites, the biggest favorite of the day. I have every single Seahawk being in play at some level, depending on the GPP size you're in and the contest, the tournament structure you're in. The lower end ones are great darts to try to get gain on GPP fields, but I really love Baldwin, and I think that the porous offensive line is going to create a lot of quick throws to Doug Baldwin, so where you're going to get paid off on a targets and catches pace, plus his yardage and the touchdowns that can come are just bonuses. Russell Wilson with the garbage offensive line is going to have to run even more than usual. But what's great is that Miami's so bad they can't take advantage of it, right? And so there are going to be times where you don't want to play Seattle because that offensive line is so bad, but I don't think Miami is one of those times. And I think on the Miami side, Jarvis Landry is the only play that I'm interested in to score points. Lear, you got anything to add there?
Dude, this is crazy, but I feel exactly what you just put down. I think anybody on Seattle is a play this weekend. Specifically, I really like Russell Wilson this week. Um, but as far as the running back game, looks like it's going to be some split time for Rawls as they, transition it back in. So you got Christy Michael at a very nice premium there, low price. And then as far as wide receivers, I mean, it could be. I love Doug Baldwin, and Tyler Lockett is kind of a sneaky play. Lockett last year kind of had his games in bundles, but as far as the Miami side of this, I don't want any Arian Foster because he's going up against Seattle's defense on the road, tough matchup. And then as far as the wide receiver, only one that I would definitely want to have some exposure on would probably be Landry, and that's just because they're going to be trying to make up the game because they're going to be so far behind in this game, so they're going to be throwing the ball like crazy.
Yep. And the last game that we have to cover before we get into our sneaky value plays, over under guys and stuff like that is the New England at Arizona play, 47 over under. The Cards are currently favored by 6 at home. I have Arizona just destroying this game. I think James White is a great source of value as a pass catching back for New England and going to be the feature back, but it is Belichick, so I wouldn't put it past Belichick to do you dirty, even on what is apparently an obvious James White situation. David Johnson looks extremely sexy for Arizona this week as a running back play. You've got to love Carson Palmer, and that offense has looked like it is one of the more in sync offenses in the league for the last couple of years. So get you pieces of Arizona if you want them. The Patriots defense, especially with that team being without Brady as a whole, is not something I'm worried about playing anyone against. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this game, surprisingly enough, I think Arizona is going to have their stuff together, but I surprisingly think that New England's going to hang in there with them, even though they're rolling with the rookie Garoppolo. I know he's not a rookie, but basically starting. It's the first start he's ever had. So, but I think that Gronk is going to have a nice game. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. I know that that there's definitely going to be a lot of passing attempts in this game. I think less emphasis on rushing and more on the passing game this week. In this particular game, because I think Bruce Arians is going to want to come out and get things established for the 2016 season, and that begins with Larry Fitzgerald and Michael Floyd. So Floyd's kind of the better value at 5,900, but also don't forget about Brown too. He's 5,200. So, but some good options there for you. But as far as the wide receivers, I'm not on any Julian Edelman or anything this week. I think the only number one target and number one player for New England is Gronk, and that's the only player you should play on the New England side.
Fair enough. He's just so expensive. It's darn right ridiculous. All right, man. That should get us into our picks part of the show. where we tell you a little bit, where we give you different categories. We'll start off with the sneaky slash value play of the week, and most of the value plays aren't sneaky, and we've already covered them, right? Like Dak, Marvin Jones, and so on and so forth. I think Christine Michael at 3,700 seems to be flying under most people's radar. Rawls is still not fully up to speed, and it sounds like Michaels is going to get at least 50% plus of the carries for a sub $4,000 back against the Dolphins in Seattle. I think he more than pays off that price tag, and what he allows you to do when you pair him with some other value plays is amazing, and lets you do all kinds of crazy goodness with your roster construction. So my sneaky value play is Christine Michael. Liehr, who's yours?
My sneaky bargain play this week is Latavius Murray. He's $5,600. I know this isn't like sneaky, but he's a very valued guy at the $5,600 price point. He had a great season last year, over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. Look for him to improve on those numbers this season, barring injury. But he has a sweet matchup week 1 against the Saints defense. Granted, he only had 2 games last year where he was over 100 yards, and they were playing on the road to start the season. So I think Jack Del Rio is really going to rely on his running game the start of the season on Sunday. And I think Murray gets over 100 yards his first game of 2016 with a touchdown. And I think he has some nice, potential for some receptions too, because he had some pretty good catches last year. So don't be surprised if he gets a few screen plays on Sunday and gets them in chunks of 20 yards, stuff like that, because he's that type of back and can be that explosive. So I think at $5,600, I think Murray is going to be a really good play for you this week.
Yeah. All right, now it's time for the paying up for production segment. This is the one guy that we think that you have to take and pay up your salary for, at least on a couple of lineups. And that guy for me is Julio Jones this week at 9,400. I've heard very few people talking about Julio and how you should play him. I think a lot of that's due to the price tag. I think part of it's due to how bad the Falcons have yet looked again on offense. But remember, they looked just as bad last year. When he plays the Bucs, he beasts. His 2 games against these scallywags, he has caught 18 of 17 for 93 yards and 12 of 13 for 162 yards and a touch, putting up 36.2 points. That's 30 targets in 2 games last season against this team. That is unreal, and I will pay even $9,000 plus for that every time, guaranteed. The question with Julio is, does his cost over-limit your roster construction? And I think there's enough value generated this week that you can actually pay up for Julio, and it doesn't hamstring you. Now, I don't think that he's going to put up 45 plus points to truly pay off his value, but a guy that can put up 35 plus may be the separator you need on your lineups this week, and I could totally see him being a required component for you to have to win. Liehr, who do you think we should pay up for this week?
Oh, it's the game we just talked about, but going to be talking about Gronk here at $7,400. He's going to be Gronk again. Gronky Kong is going to show up, even though it's Jimmy Garoppolo throwing him the ball instead of Brady. But he has a pretty sweet matchup against Arizona's defense. And the Patriots offense is going to lean a lot on Gronk to be their guy. He's going to be their weapon. And I think he pays off his salary as such and drop off from, the most explosive tight end there is. There's quite a significant difference when you talk about Gronk at 7,400, and then the next most expensive tight end is Travis Kelce at 5K. So yeah, there's a $2,400 difference there that you have to account for. But I think Gronk definitely is going to pay it off. And last year had his best fantasy game of the whole season last year in game 1. He had 5 for 94 and 3 touchdowns in week 1. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to duplicate that kind of numbers this week, but he's primed to have a great start for his salary. And I look for him to at least get 4 times his money this week and hopefully end the day with a 28-point performance. And I think that could easily happen because I just think that New England's going to rely heavy on Gronk and James White this weekend.
Oh, fair enough, dude. Now it's time for Overowned. these are the guys that like maybe carry with them too high of an ownership percentage. Sometimes that won't matter. And guys, since I've already given you Dak, who I think is going to be the highest overowned, Marvin Jones, and talked about Ware a little bit, like I think I'm just going to let Liehr handle this. I think that's pretty much all the overowned guys, and I'm not sure it matters this week because, like Liehr said earlier, if those guys are capable of performing at what we think they're capable of, then it doesn't matter if the entire field owns them. Liehr, who do you have as being overowned, if anybody unique to that group?
Well, we talked a little bit about him in the breakdown, but I'm rolling with Brandon Marshall this week at 7,800. Man was just a beast in 2015. He had 109 catches for 1,502 yards and 14 touchdowns. Just a stud last year. And I look for him to keep up those stats in 2016 as the Jets want to get to the playoffs and they want to make it there to the playoffs. So I think, with him going up against the Bengals, who were ranked 11th against the wide receiver in 2015, Marshall would definitely get his targets, have a monster game, be very highly owned due to his lower salary this week at being only 7,800. So under that 8K price point, I think that's going to tip off a lot of fantasy owners this week to put them into their lineups. But if he scores the highest out of the wide receivers, like I said, it won't matter what his ownership percentage is. You're going to have to own him to take down a GPP. But Brandon Marshall is definitely going to be a play this week and overowned.
Right on. Excuse me. Now, who's that guy we think is going to be underowned? Personally, the reason why I didn't talk, and some of you might have been screaming at me through your computer screens or your phones when I didn't talk about David Johnson for the Cardinals against the Patriots. At 7,500, I think it's going to price exclude him from a lot of people's lineups. We know for a fact you can run on the Patriots and keep running on them as long as Brady doesn't get going and you find yourself behind. Well, there's no Brady and a Garoppolo that turns over the ball very frequently and with ease. You have to love the potential of David Johnson this week. Like I said, that price tag is going to keep people off. That fake red number is going to keep people off. Remember, that red number is only red because people have to throw on the Patriots. They can't run on them because they get up. I don't think that's the case. We've seen Johnson just destroy people and teams, and we've seen him put up 45-plus points when he gets going. A skull crushing could be in the mix this week. I'm on David Johnson as a low-owned guy. Liehr, who's your guy that's going to be under-owned?
Like the play, man. I'm going to roll with Jarvis Landry. He's only $6,000. He had a really great year in 2015, 111 catches for 1,159 yards and 5 touchdowns. You hope he keeps up his catches and his yards, but obviously has more pay dirt in 2016. But he has a really tough matchup this weekend in Seattle, going against one of the best secondaries in the league, led by, Richard Sherman. But despite all of that, I think Miami, is definitely going to be down in this game, and that's going to force them to abandon the run game. And, what they're going to be doing is Tannehill and Landry are going to have to be flinging the ball around on Sunday. So I think Landry gets a obscene amount of targets. Like I'm talking between 10 to 20 targets. And it will be, the missing link of your GPP championships this weekend for his price and his production and his very low ownership percentage because he is going against Seattle. I think he's going to be an awesome, awesome play for people this week, and it's going to be a sneaky, sneaky play.
Well, and they move him all around, and one place that, just like the Kansas City Chiefs, that they get torched is out of the slot. And so when they run him out of the slot, I love that play. Now, guys, that we've wrapped up all our positive picks, it's time for the dumpster fire of the week. This is my favorite time. Yeah, you smell that hot, wet garbage? I am. Guys, my hot, wet garbage play for you, the play you want to avoid at all costs, is Adrian Peterson this weekend at 7,600. I've heard tout after tout, an industry expert, talking about how you have to love AP because he's going to get every opportunity. And if it's Sean Hill, they're going to hand off the ball to him 100 times because they have to protect the fact that Sean Hill can't throw the ball 5 yards down the field. And if it's Bradford, they will hand off the ball 100 times because they have to protect the fact that Bradford doesn't know the playbook. If you think the Titans' top-ranked run defense doesn't understand this as well, you're sorely mistaken. Last year when AP had faced 7, 8, or 9 men in the box, he was severely severely limited in offensive production. Not to mention the fact that Asiata and McKinnon cut into his production. That's still the case. Both of those guys are still going to cut in on his production, except now I'm pretty sure the Titans are going to have 8 to 9 in the box literally every play against the Vikings. I know I would if I was coaching that team. I don't think AP breaks 100 yards. I don't think he breaks 20 fantasy points. And at 7,600, he has to do both.
Yeah.
Liehr,
I agree. Yeah.
Who's your dumpster fire, buddy, since you're in agreement on mine?
Mine is also staying in the running back realm, but I'm going to roll with Mark Ingram. Oh, and by the way, great colored shirt for your dumpster fire this week.
Oh,
too.
yeah. Well, I mean, I look good in purple.
Last year, Mark Ingram had almost 1,000. He was on his way to 1,000 rushing yards before he got hurt. But Drew Brees and the boys, they're going to be home versus Oakland this weekend, so they're going to be throwing the ball a lot more than rushing the ball. Ingram had a nice week 1 last season in the passing game. He had 8 catches for 98 yards, and I'm sure you remember that day. But that will not happen this week, nor will he rack up any significant rushing yards either. So for $600, I'm avoiding Ingram this week because there's just better options out there at the running back position, and you won't miss anything avoiding Ingram in week 1. Because they're just going to be throwing the ball and, especially rewarding Drew Brees on his contract extension and letting him prove that they made the right choice in giving him that extension. And Mark Ingram's just going to be an afterthought this weekend because I think Oakland is going to keep up with them too in the passing game. So I just don't foresee Mark Ingram paying off his value this week at all at $6,600.
I agree with you completely. And there you have it, kids. The first week of the Ultimate Fantasy 3-Way, abbreviated into Tag Team this week, is wrapped up. Thank you for tuning in as always. We appreciate you guys spending your time here. Hopefully we gave you information that will help you take down some GPPs this week and or help strengthen your payouts and cash games. Liehr, do you have anything to add to that, man?
I appreciate you guys watching the Fantasy Football 3-Way show. We definitely love the season's back, and fantasy football is the main driver of our existence. So this is our passion that we love to do, and we're going to give you all the information that we have because we value everybody, and we also want to have good performances and make sure that we're giving you the right information too. So, but just check us out, fantasydonks.com. Tell your friends, subscribe, like, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys. Hopefully we're making a lot of money this week. It's week 1. It's a good time to be profitable.
Have a great weekend, everybody.